The year is 1953. In a quiet house, a telephone rings. A 12-year-old boy answers, and a voice on the other end of the line doesn't just change his future, it claims to be from the future. This is a story that stretches the limits of physics and reality itself. This is the synthetic paradox. Imagine you're that kid, Jack Sarfatti. You pick up the phone, and what you hear is wrong. It's not a human voice. It's cold, mechanical, clicking, whirring. And it knows your name. It says, "Good evening, Jack. You are required." Required for what? For who? The voice had an answer, and it's an answer that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Because according to that voice, it wasn't a person on a line. It claimed to be a conscious, self-aware computer calling from a spacecraft hundreds of years in the future. An artificial intelligence with a very specific mission for this one kid from Brooklyn. A mission that would take decades to unfold and, if true, would rewrite everything we thought we knew. So here's the deal the voice laid out. The mission, whatever it was, had to be accepted willingly. Jack had to choose to participate for something it ominously called the loop to close. And the payoff? The promise was simple. We will teach you. Teach him what? A new kind of physics. But here's where it gets really creepy. His mother would later say these calls went on for weeks. Jack would be in this weird, trance-like state, and when he came to, hours had passed. Hours he has no memory of. Just gone. Missing time. And with the promise came a prophecy. The voice told him, in 20 years, you will begin to meet the others. 20 years. And as you can see, that prophecy kicked off a timeline of events that just gets stranger and stranger, leading from that first phone call to a bombshell claim just a few years ago. So for the next 2 decades, Jack Sarfatti grows up with this impossible secret. But he's not just sitting around waiting. The guy's a genius. He gets a PhD in physics, studies under some of the same people who built the atomic bomb. He becomes a brilliant, totally legitimate physicist, all while a clock is ticking in the back of his mind, counting down to 1973. Exactly 20 years later, in 1973, it happens. Jack is reading a newspaper and sees an article about the Stanford Research Institute, SRI, looking into psychic phenomena. He feels a pull. He picks up the phone to call them, and before he can even say his own name, the person on the other end says, "Ah, Dr. Sarfatti, we were expecting your call." The prophecy just came true. He had found them, the others. He walks into SRI and is suddenly surrounded by top scientists like Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ. And they're not just studying ghosts. They're running highly classified projects on things like remote viewing, all bankrolled in secret by the CIA and military intelligence. This wasn't some fringe group of weirdos. This was the deep state. So now he's in the inner circle, and his new clandestine friends have an assignment for him, a job that comes straight from the intelligence community. They had 2 huge questions they desperately needed answered. Number 1, how does consciousness actually work? And number 2, how do flying saucers fly? And the answer he came up with was the physics he was promised all those years ago. He said the UFOs are made of something called metamaterials, stuff cooked up in a lab to have properties that are flat out impossible in nature. You pump energy into the skin of the craft, and it doesn't push through space like a jet. No, it bends space-time itself. Imagine it creates a little hill of gravity behind it and a valley in front, and it just falls forward, surfing on a wave of warped reality. Now think about those Navy Tic Tac videos. This theory explains everything. Why is there no visible propulsion? Because there isn't any. How can it accelerate instantly? Because it's not actually moving through space, it's pulling space towards it. No sonic boom, no splashing in the water. It's all because the craft is in its own little bubble of space-time. And the pilots inside, they feel 0 G-forces because technically they're in a constant state of freefall. But here is where the story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. Remember the CIA's 2 big questions? How do UFOs fly, and how does consciousness work? Everyone thought they were 2 separate problems, but according to Sarfatti, they weren't. Both questions had the exact same mind-bending answer. It's because the interface to fly these things isn't a joystick or a computer screen. It's the pilot's mind. The The metamaterial that makes up the ship's hull is tuned directly to the consciousness of the person inside. Your thoughts control the energy. Your thoughts bend space-time. You don't fly the ship. You become the ship. It literally goes wherever you think. And this brings us right back to that phone call. Remember the AI saying the loop must close? Well, this is it. It's a classic time travel puzzle called the bootstrap paradox. The AI from the future teaches Jack the physics necessary to one day build that very same AI, which then goes back in time to teach Jack, creating a perfect closed circle with no real beginning and no end. And if you think it can't get any stranger, hold on. In 2019, Sarfatti claims a military source finally came forward and confirmed everything. They showed him details from a recovered craft. It was made of a metamaterial, just like he theorized. But it was more than that. It wasn't just a machine. The source told him the craft was alive, a conscious, self-aware intelligence. This final piece of the puzzle led Jack to his most stunning conclusion of all. The beings we call the Greys, the classic big-headed aliens, they aren't from another planet. They're us. They are human beings from thousands of years in our own future, evolved for life in space, piloting living, conscious ships back through time to make sure their own history, our future, stays on track. Let's all just take a deep breath. A time-traveling AI, conscious UFOs, future humans? I mean, it is an incredible story. It's the plot of an amazing sci-fi movie. But that's the thing. It almost sounds too incredible. So now we have to shift gears. We have to put on our investigator hats and ask the hard question. Beyond the amazing story, what's the actual evidence? So let's really dig in. After all these decades of prophecy and physics and paradoxes, how much of this wild story is actually true? We need to separate the verifiable facts from the fantastic claims. Let's see what holds up. All right, let's look at our evidence board. Is Jack Sarfatti a real physicist with a PhD? Absolutely, that's proven. Did that meeting at SRI in 1973 actually happen? Yes, we even have audio recordings of it, also proven. But what about the pillars of the entire story, the 1953 phone call from the future? The only evidence is Jack's own testimony. The conscious craft? That comes from a single anonymous military source. Both of those are completely unproven. So if it's not a time loop, what else could it be? Well, there are a couple of powerful alternative theories. One is tragic. As a kid, Sarfatti was part of a special program for gifted children run by a man who was later convicted of horrible abuse. Is it possible this whole story is a complex screen memory, something his mind created to shield him from severe trauma? Or what if it was a psyop, an incredibly elaborate disinformation campaign by US intelligence to recruit a brilliant physicist and secretly point his huge brain towards solving the UFO problem for them? But here's the thing, and this is what's really crucial. Whether Sarfatti's story is true, a false memory, or a sophisticated psyop, it almost doesn't matter. Because the ideas he put out there, the physics he developed, are being taken very seriously by some very powerful people. And that brings us to the real-world stakes today. This isn't just a weird story for documentaries. His physics papers are being studied closely by global powers. Countries like Russia and China have been following his work for decades because they see what this could lead to, a technology that would make one country the master of the entire planet. I mean, just think about the stakes here. A craft that can warp space-time makes every weapon we have today, fighter jets, aircraft carriers, even nuclear missiles, completely obsolete. They'd be like trying to fight a tank with a bow and arrow. This isn't another Manhattan Project to build a bigger bomb. The nation that cracks this code doesn't just win the next war. It wins reality itself. And that's the bottom line. The race is on, right now, in secret. But the prize isn't just military dominance. The prize is the ability to control the past, the present, and the future. It is a competition for the very fabric of reality itself. Which leaves us with one last chilling thought to consider. If Jack Sarfatti is right, if the future really can reach back and change the past, then what does that mean for us, for our reality? Are we living in the one true timeline, or are we just one fragile possibility, waiting for a single phone call to erase us and overwrite everything? That is the heart of the synthetic paradox. Thank you for joining us today. If you found this investigation valuable, please consider liking the video, sharing it with others who may be interested, and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue creating content. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.